The factory system in Arknights Endfield can be a bit overwhelming for beginners because in the early game, the in-game tutorials doesn't make it simple enough to understand what is actually happening. So this will be my complete beginner guide to get you going in the early to mid-game. But in the end game, things can get a bit more complex with the factory system because the stuff that you need to build to craft equipment, like this one for example that is made for Levitain, can get very complicated, as you can see right here, just to craft this disc. But the good news is that all of this can be skipped if you understand the fundamentals and craft some of the things that are really needed that acts as the building blocks to build more complex stuff like this one right here. Now, before we start with anything, is the factory system even necessary in the early game? And the answer is not really. Progression actually matters more in the early game because you need to obtain data loggers. And data loggers are basically the stuff that you can find on the map. You can see right here that this one says protocol data loggers, and you can track them and obtain them. Once you're there, if you hit activate, it'll give you basic AIC index. And these basic AIC index are used to unlock the devices that you would need to craft anything in the game. So if I press T on my keyboard, it brings me to this basic AIC plan right here. Unlocking these nodes gives you templates, and templates are basically blueprints that you need to unlock devices that are needed in the development process of everything that you need in the game. And once you have those templates, you can then use the facility list, which is Z on my keyboard, to craft those devices. So if you have the seed picking unit unlocked, all you need to do is go to your facility list, click on it, and click on construction. You can see here that it can be unlocked with Amethyst part. We'll get to Amethyst parts later on in the video, so you don't have to worry about that. Just click on the quantity that you need, and here it says you have to go to the core AIC area for gear assembly. And what that means is that you just need to go to your factory, which is this one right here, before you can craft those devices. And once I'm there, just click on facility list, and let's try and craft it again, just like so. Now, as you progress, some of the things that will alarm you to start building your factory or to start focusing on the factory system is the things that you unlock on the basic AIC plan. The things that you need in the early game is the Mining 3, which will give you the Electric Mining Rig Mark II that will allow you to mine basically any mineral in the overworld, and it gets sent directly to your factory. Under processing, you need to unlock up to planting, but if you can go up to grinding, that'll be really good. Make sure to unlock shredding, parts fitting, and packaging. And under power, the most important thing is power 1, which will give you access to thermal banks that'll help keep your factory running even when you're sleeping. As you make more stuff with your factory, you can use the outpost management, which is Y on my keyboard, to sell them and get stock bills. So for example, I have a lot of Origo crust right here. So if I select it and try to sell it, I'm going to get Valley stock bills. And the name that is associated with the stock bill actually matters because if you try to craft any gear, like this one, for example, you can see here that it says Wooling stock bill. So that means all the Valley stock bill that you had cannot be used to craft this armor. If I go down a little bit, you can see that this one can be crafted with Valley stock bill, and you need this disc as well. I'll show you how to craft the disc later on in the video. For your gear, that is your armor and gloves, my recommendation is to start crafting them if you get to the Wooling region, because most of the 5-star gear can only be crafted once you reach the Wooling region. You can see here that I don't have the template for this one unlocked. So if I go to template crates, it shows me exactly where I can find the template. And the templates can be found in the Jinyu Valley of Wooling. Now that the basic explanations are done, let's get into the actual crafting process. Almost anything that you craft in the game needs a fundamental material, and in the early game, there are 5 fundamental materials that you need to focus on to get the stuff that you need to progress smoothly. The first one is amethyst ore, the second one is originium ore, the third one is ferrium ore, and for flowers, you need acatine and buck flower. So the first thing you need to do is head over to any originium ore site, and you can actually find them easily because all the minerals have this icon on the map. Place your electric mining rig. So I have one here. All I need to do is place it here so that it can continuously mine Iridium ore directly into my factory over there. Now you can see here that I already have an electric pylon that is powering this electric mining rig. But if this electric pylon was not there, I'll have to place one to make this electric mining rig start working. And electric pylons are basically devices that you can use to supply power to all the devices that you're going to be using. So any devices that can be found in the AoE of the electric pylon will be powered. After that, I'll need to find amethyst ore. You can see that I already have one here besides an electric pylon, so mining amethyst ore is not going to be a problem for me. The last ore that we need is Therium, and one can be found right here. Now, as you can see here, I already have the electric mining rig set up alongside a pylon to power it. For mining site, your electric pylon will not be able to supply any power unless it's close to a relay tower. And relay towers are basically towers that allows you to supply power from the grid or from your factory. Think of it as electricity poles that are used to transfer power from the grid to your homes. To transfer power to your mining site, all you need to do is just click on Start Transmission near your factory and then travel to your mining site. But there's an 80-meter distance, so once you reach that 80-meter distance, what you need to do is just place a relay tower and connect that transmission line. Once the relay tower is closer to your electric pylon or within an 80-meter distance, all you need to do is just start transmission and then input that power directly into the electric pylon, and everything within the AoE of the electric pylon will start to work. Now, once we're done with all of that, we need to refine these ores that we collected. To find a refining unit, you can click on the facility list and then just browse through these things right here to find it. There we go. But the easiest and most efficient way to do these things is to just go into the top view when you want to produce anything. And I can do that with Capsule. This view just makes everything so much easier. So I can just head over to production, find refining unit, and then place it here. Now this symbol right here means that it's not powered. We'll have to go to power and then find an electric pylon and place it near the refining unit. Once that's done, all I need to do is click on the refining unit and then drag the stuff that I need to refine into it. And for the first one, I need Iridium ore. So what I need to do is head over to the stuff in my factory itself, because these ones are the stuff that can be found in my backpack. So just click on this one right here, just drag and drop this, and then you can see that it's refining it to Origo crusts. Now, once it's working, you can actually use the belt right here, or the transport belt, to link the output of the refining unit to your factory, or the input of your factory, and it will be stored right there. But to keep things simple and neat, all you need to do is place a protocol stash, which is this thing right here, and I'm going to place it in the AoE of the electric pylon so that it can get powered. And then click on the transport belt and then link the output of the refining unit to the input of the protocol stash, and it'll go directly into my factory. So it just keeps things neat and simple. Once that's done, just set up the same thing for the other ore that we collected. Now you have Therium, you have Origo crusts, and then you have amethyst fiber. Now everything seems fine so far, but there's a bit of a problem. You can see that if I want to refine amethyst into amethyst fiber, if I drag it directly into my factory, it chooses a specific amount, which is 50 of them. So once this 50 amethyst ore is done being refined, it doesn't automatically get replenished from the factory, even though I have 8,000 of them. So to make sure this doesn't happen again, always select the output of your factory directly into the input of your refining unit, just like so. So now there'll be a constant supply of Iridium ore directly into this refining unit that will refine it into Origo crust. Then we do the same thing to the other outputs, but we need to select the material first. So switch item, amethyst ore, and then we use the transport belt to directly feed it into this refining unit to supply it with constant amethyst ore. Then we do the same thing with Therium. Once that's done, we need to focus on the flowers that will act as the raw material to craft some of the stuff that you need in the early game. You don't need a large amount because we're going to be setting up a self-sustaining factory that continuously produces those flowers for us. But you need to grab a small amount first, and to find them, we can use the database that you can use to basically find anything in the game. So just head over to the database and use the search function to search for buckflower. Enter, and then buckflower shows up. Just click on buckflower, view item details, and then click on any buckflower that you see here, and it'll show you exactly where to pick them up. So it says the hub construction site. So all you need to do is just head over to the hub. This is the hub, and find construction sites, which is this part right here. I already have a lot of them, so I'm not going to do that. So to set up a self-sustaining system, here's what you need to do. We go into the top view mode, and then we go into production. Then we place a seed picking unit. Place the seed picking unit here, and then we go for planting unit. I'm going to rotate this a little bit because it just makes everything so much easier. So all you need to do is just press R to rotate, and then it faces the opposite side. And then place another planting unit right here. Again, I'm going to rotate it just like the first one. Now we need to power it, so we go to power and then select the electric pylon. Place it right here, and everything is powered. The first thing we need to do is select the seed picking plant, and essentially what the seed picking plant does is that it converts a plant into a seed. So we just have to feed it with some buckflower, and it'll convert it into a buckflower seed. Once that's done, we feed the seeds that is being produced directly into the planting unit. And what that does is to convert the seeds back into plants, as you can see right here. Now we use the transport belt to feed the plant that is being generated directly into the seed picking unit. And then we connect the output of this seed picking unit directly into the second planting unit. The last thing we need to do is go to depot and select protocol stash, and then we connect the output of the second planting unit, or this planting unit right here, directly into the input of this protocol stash, so that it'll store the unlimited amount of plants that we are producing directly into our factory. So this is basically a loop system that gives you an unlimited amount of buckflower. We just have to do the same thing with acetine. This will work for any other flower in the overworld. So as you progress further into the game, this self-replenishing system will be your go-to so that you don't continuously pick up flowers in the overworld. Now that we have the base, or the kind of like raw materials for all the stuff that we'll need in the early game, let's craft our first one, which is going to be batteries. Anything that you use your factory to make consumes a certain amount of energy, and you want the factory to work even when you're locked out of the game sleeping. So what we need to do is to continuously feed it with energy by crafting batteries. Now to make batteries, just go to the database and search for battery right here. I'm gonna go with the first one since it's the less complex one to make. As long as you know the fundamentals, you can basically craft all of these ones later on as you progress. So we select it and view the details, and then click on view chain. Now this is basically the production process that you need to follow in order to craft this battery. And we've actually made things easier for us because remember that we've already refined a lot of amethyst fiber from amethyst ore. So your production process actually starts from here because those are the things that we don't actually have. We need to use a fitting unit to transform amethyst fiber into amethyst part, and then we need to use a shredding unit to transform or convert originium ore into originium powder before we can use the amethyst part and the originium powder to make the battery. So let's set up the first parts. We'll need a fitting unit, so we go to production and then select a fitting unit. It needs to be powered, so we go to power and then select an electric pylon. Let's place it somewhere here, and then we need to feed it with amethyst fiber, but we don't want to make the same mistake that we made with the first one. So the most important thing is to feed it directly from your factory so that you have an endless supply of amethyst fiber. So we select this one right here and then find amethyst fiber, which is going to be this one right here. And then once that's done, we use the transport belt to feed it directly into the input of the fitting unit. And then to set up the second part, we need a shredding unit. So select shredding unit and then place it here. Now we go to the factory, switch item, originium ore, and then we feed it directly into the input of the shredding unit. Now the originium powder and the amethyst parts need to go through a packaging unit before we can make the battery. So we go to production 2 and then find a packaging unit. And keep in mind that if you want to delete anything, you just have to use stash and then it'll just go directly back to your factory. You don't actually lose anything if you stash them. You can also use the bulk action here to basically select everything you have and then either move them or stash them. So just keep that in mind. Now, all we need to do is connect the output of the fitting unit to the input of the packaging unit, and then connect the output of this shredding unit to the input of the packaging unit. And the last thing we need to do is to supply the battery to a thermal bank that'll keep our factory powered. We go to power, thermal bank, place your thermal bank right here. And then we connect the input of the packaging unit directly into the thermal bank. This setup that we have will work for most players, but we want to be efficient as much as possible. If we look at the formula or the blueprint to craft these batteries, we need twice as much as originium powder to craft the battery. So what we can do is basically just set up another input of originium ore into the shredding unit to give us originium powder. So I'll have to do a little bit of editing right here by using the bulk action and then select this part right here and then press F to stash. And then we input originium ore into the shredding unit. Then we do the same thing here. So now we have two inputs of originium ore into the shredding unit, but we need to do a little bit of editing here as well. So just have to select all of this, F to stash it, and now we route the transport belts all over again. So essentially what is happening now is that we're producing more originium powder to basically match the amount of amethyst parts that we're producing so that we can make more batteries much faster. The next thing we need to craft is explosives. So we just have to go to the database and then search explosive to see the blueprint for that. And then we view the chain. So this is what we need to craft explosives. So we need a fitting unit to convert amethyst fiber to amethyst parts. And then we need a shredding unit to convert agatine into agatine powder. This is actually very similar to the battery that we just produced. Since we need amethyst parts, I'm actually going to get it directly from this part. So I'll just have to rotate this and then just reroute the belt to the input and then connect the output to this belt right here. And then I can set up a packaging unit right here. So all I need to do is route the output of this fitting unit into the input of this packaging unit. Now I need a shredding unit to shred the agatine into agatine powder. So I'll go to the input of my factory and select agatine. There we go. Into the input of the shredding unit, just like so. And now we connect the input of the shredding unit into the packaging unit. Now all of this need to be powered. So we go to power, electric pylon, we place it somewhere here. And then we can just use a protocol stash. We go to depot access, put a protocol stash here. And then we connect the outputs of the packaging unit, which is going to be the explosive, directly into the input of the protocol stash. The protocol stash need to be powered, so let me move this one a little bit here. And there we go. Now your factory will produce an unlimited number of explosives while you're sleeping. The next thing that we need to produce is bug capsule. And these are very, very important because what they do is that they heal you whilst you're in battle if your health drops below 60%. To craft bug capsules, all we need to do is go to the database and then search for bug capsule. As usual, the purple one will be much complicated to craft compared to the blue ones. I'm gonna stick with the simple one, but once you know the fundamentals, you can use that to craft the purple one. So let's select the blue one, view details, view the chain, and what we need is amethyst bottle, which can be molded with the molding unit directly from amethyst fiber. And then we need to use a shredding unit to shred buck flower into buck flower powder, and then we put everything into a filling unit to give us the buck capsule. So we go to the top view and just find out where I have some amethyst fiber in my production line right here. And right here I have buck flower. So I'm gonna set up a molding unit, go to production, molding units. We set up the molding unit here, and then we just route the input of this amethyst fiber into the input of this molding unit. And now I just have to find buck flower in my production line, which is this part right here. So all I need to do is set up a shredding unit somewhere here. Let me rotate this a little bit so that the input faces this part. And then I'm gonna route the protocol stash right here into the shredding unit. Now I need a filling unit. So go to production to filling units, which is this one right here. And then we place that here. And then all we need to do is just route the input of the shredding unit to this part. And I'm gonna move this a little bit up here. And then we use the conveyor belt to route this to this side. And then we use bulk action, select all of this, F to delete it. And then we route the input of this into the filling unit. But everything needs power, so we go to power and electric pylon. We can place it somewhere here, and then everything will start being produced. So now we can have another protocol stash here. We go to depot access, protocol stash, conveyor belt, and then we just route the output of the filling unit into the input of the protocol stash, but it needs power. So the electric pylon, we place that here, and then everything starts working as they should. So now you should have an unlimited production of the blue rarity buck capsule. The last thing that we need to produce is discs, and you need them to craft equipment like gloves and armor. So if I head over to gear assembly, if I want to craft this, I'll need this purple disc called Zeronite component. For these ones, I cannot craft them because I don't have the template crates yet, as I mentioned earlier. For this guide, let's focus on the ones that you can craft with Valley stock builds, which will be this set right here called Aberry's Legacy, that you can basically slap on all DPS characters early on, regardless whether they do arts damage or physical damage. So let's focus on the blue rarity crystal component. Just click on gearing unit, and here's the production chain before you can get it. So let's set up a grinding unit first. Production to grinding unit. We put the grinding unit here. Keep in mind that the crystal components are not stuff that we can sell at the outpost. So there's no need to connect them directly to the factory to produce an unlimited amount to get more stock bills. So we can just choose a limited amount of the input materials that we need directly. So we'll need originium powder and sand leaf powder. I already have some sand leaf powder here, but just keep in mind that sand leaf is basically a flower that you can pick up in the overworld. And you can just pick up a small amount and then set up the self-sustaining system to produce an unlimited amount that we set up earlier for buck flower and acetine. And then we set up a refining unit. So we go to production, refining unit, and then we just connect this to the input of that. Now we need to refine this again. So we place another refining unit beside this one, and then connect the output of this to the input so that we can further refine this. And then we place the gearing unit where the second production line is also going to go to. So just connect the input of this to that, and we're done with the first production line. For the second production line, we need amethyst powder and sand leaf powder going into a grinding unit, and whatever we get will go into a refining unit. So let's set that up real quick. We put the grinding unit here and we select sand leaf powder and then amethyst powder. And then whatever we get goes into a refining unit. Connect the input to this, and then this will go into the input of this gearing unit. And once it reaches the required amount, you get your crystalline component. You don't really need a protocol stash to store this directly in your factory because, as I said earlier, it's not something that you're going to be producing for an unlimited number of times to sell it. So you can just claim it here and then craft the gear that you want once you hit that specific number, which in this case is 50, and I actually have 40 of them. By far, the disc should have the more complex production line compared to the high rarity versions of the other stuff that we produced earlier, like bug capsules, for example. So be sure to keep that in mind. I hope this gives you some good insights on how the factory system works, and I hope I didn't overwhelm you because that was the opposite that I was trying to do in this video compared to the tutorials that the game will put you through. I'll be making regular Endfield content, so be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more Endfield content. My Discord server will be in the pinned comment if you're having any issues with Endfield or you just want a place to chill or hang out. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye bye.